If you're like me and you're still rocking the GoXLR and the SM7B combo in 2025, I still fully intend to rock it in 2026 as well. I just want to show you, I did originally make a video about this 2 years ago, but since then I have learned a lot more about audio, a lot more about processing, and just more about this mic. So I want to jump back into the GoXLR settings. I want to explain exactly how I have it connected, how I reduce background noise to an absolute minimum, and just in general give some advice for anyone who might be struggling to get some good settings out of this device, or the fact that it is a little bit behind the times in terms of software with no graphic EQ. So let's jump into the software now and take a look. Okay, so we're going to keep things relatively simple. Let's go ahead and start with the mic setup tab here. It's going to reduce the volume just a little bit. This is just to make sure you don't blow your own ears out. But you can see I've got condenser enabled and I'm on 28 decibels. Why do I have condenser enabled when I'm on a dynamic mic? That's because I'm using this device, which is very similar to a cloud lifter, but it's called the Cathedral Pipes Durham Mark II. I found in my video a couple years ago, the cloud lifter introduces a ton of noise on the SM7B GoXLR combo, so I don't recommend it. But since switching to this one, I've noticed a drastic reduction in the background noise, so definitely check this out. I'll have it linked down below. They did unfortunately up the price. It used to only be $50, which was kind of a steal, but now it's $89.99. So I actually heard from someone else that the Fed head gives very similar results to this, so if the Fed head is cheaper, go for that. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the noise gate here. So as far as the noise gate, -48 is the threshold. This is the volume at which the gate is going to open, and you can hear me speaking very low. I can speak as quiet as I want, and I'm going to be above that. That's intentional. I don't really want it to, I don't want to compete with the noise gate. You know, I don't want to have to speak more loudly to get it to open. So that's why I keep it low. Now the attenuation is how much of the background noise is getting reduced or attenuated out when the gate closes. I used to set this all the way up to 85, and I see a lot of YouTubers just crank it all the way to 100. My philosophy on gating has kind of changed over the years, and I like it to be more of a smooth, gradual elimination of the background noise because I don't like the harsh cut in and cut out that it gives you when you put it to 100. So I'm only reducing about 66%. And as you can hear, when I stop talking, there's no harsh, cut in and cut out. It just kind of slowly goes down and then it's gone. So the attack is still quick. Again, I don't want to have to compete with the gate. I want it to open as soon as I speak. And then the release is 100 just to make sure that you're not hearing it. It trails off just slowly enough that it's not, again, competing with me speaking. The EQ is similar, but I have also added what's called a high shelf, which is just a general boost in the high end. So 30 hertz, again, we're cutting that because we don't want any of the low rumble. The human voice doesn't go this low, so you're totally fine to cut this. You could even go all the way down if you really wanted to. But 5 is perfectly serviceable. 80 hertz is the actual boost that I want in my voice, the bass energy of it. And then 250 and 500 are specifically cut to remove what's called boxiness or mud from the signal. And you'll see exactly the difference when we switch over to the unprocessed signal, which is what I've got this profile over here set up for. And then I kind of want it to be a smooth, gradual increase as we get into some of the higher frequencies. So I'm only reducing 1 kilohertz, which is basically standard, like fundamental mid-range frequency, only reducing that 1 just to get a very mild scoop. And then 2 kilohertz is flat. And then from there, starting at 2.5 all the way up to 14, we're just giving a slight bump in all of the presence region. So compared to my last settings, it just sounds a lot more clear, a lot brighter, a lot more lively, I guess you would say, in this area. And when I went back and compared, it actually sounded pretty flat on my old settings. All right, so from there, let's go ahead and move on to the compressor. Again, different philosophy than last time around. I'm using much less compression, a much lower ratio. I think before I was on like a 4:1 ratio. Basically, the compressor works by increasing the quiet parts of your voice, the quiet parts of your speech, and decreasing the volume of your loudest speech to make the volume a little bit more uniform across the board so that your listeners don't have to constantly, ride their volume up and down. So anyway, the threshold is the volume at which it's going to start compressing. The ratio is how hard the compressor is actually pushing, literally compressing the waveform. The attack is how quick it activates. The release is how quick it stops working after you finish speaking. And then the makeup gain is basically there to compensate for the loss in volume that the compressor is going to give you. But what is weird and kind of a quirk about the GoXLR that a lot of other people have figured out is that the makeup gain is like the most ultra clean digital gain you will ever hear in your life. I can't explain it. All I know is that it works amazingly well. So my recommendation is actually just to use this to get that last little bit of volume that you need to get your signal up into the really healthy, like -10 to -5 range, and keep the compression a little bit lighter. I'm not going to purposefully yell into the mic or anything, but trust me when I say that if you get right up on it, it still doesn't peak or sound awful. It just gets a little louder, but it doesn't peak or clip or sound terrible or anything. So this is a perfectly acceptable level of compression unless you are just absolutely screaming into the mic at all times, in which case, yes, I would recommend you up the ratio. Okay, so the final bit of processing. Now again, I do want to mention there are some differences between the GoXLR Mini and the full-size GoXLR that I've got here. The Mini does not have access to the de-esser, and it only has, I believe, 6 total bands of EQ, 2 bass bands, 2 mid, and 2 treble that you can use. So you would obviously have to adjust those settings. You wouldn't be able to do all the same EQ that I'm doing, but you could get a pretty similar result. For the de-esser, because I have this additional presence boost here, it also increases the sort of sibilance in your S sounds. Even though the SM7B does a great job at controlling that naturally, it can only do so much. So I did have to increase my de-esser about 10% just to combat the presence boost that I've got here. But basically those are my settings. So this is the fully processed tone. And right here is what's called dry, meaning no gate, no compression, no EQ, no de-esser. So this sounds okay. Sounds all right. But, you know, you're listening to the unprocessed tone. And then here is the processed tone. So it is a very, very large difference that we're talking about. Just really kind of gets that fully polished, nice, just razor sharp sound out of this mic that when you hear a lot of other people's YouTube videos or you hear their streams, you think, wow, like, why doesn't my mic sound like that? You know, all the things that I've learned over the years about EQ, compression, and gating, I've kind of come to the conclusion that these are pretty much optimal settings for my voice. Now, again, I want you to understand every voice is different, and there are going to be some adjustments that you would want to make to this EQ. Maybe you don't even want, you know, this much bass being boosted. You could reduce this. And as you can hear, that still sounds perfectly fine. But for me, I like just that very slight bump in the bass. Because, you know, obviously I don't want to sit with my lips touching the mic the whole time. That way, you know, I don't have to get full proximity effect to still get a nice bassy sound. So I would say, you know, start with these settings as a baseline and then make the adjustments depending on your voice specifically. But yeah, that's basically it. So if you have any questions about the GoXLR, any settings, or the hardware I'm using, like I said, I'm going to link everything I'm using, cables, mic, the booster, everything is going to be linked in the description. And yeah, I've got a lot more videos coming down the pipe pretty soon, as they say. And I can't wait to share those guys with you. A lot of Silent Hill stuff and some very exciting stuff as well. But yeah, any other questions about audio, hop in my Discord, send me a DM, let me know if you're struggling with the GoXLR. I think it's still an amazing device and it's perfectly serviceable for me. I don't plan on upgrading anytime soon. So thanks for watching. See you soon.